Welcome to the City Movement Podcast. At the City Movement, we are passionate about planting churches and YMCAs and uplifting the Christian mission of the YMCA. In each episode, we will talk deeply about the mission of the YMCA and provide encouragement to pastors and members of churches and YMCAs. We're your hosts, Jeff Snyder and Mike Newman. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Let's jump into today's episode. All right, welcome in to Season 2, Episode 4 of the City Movement Podcast, and we are taking the podcast to a new level today.
Come on, new level.
Tell them what we're doing, Mike.
We're interviewing all the way across the country Bryan Sloan from Arlington, Texas. Go Broncos. Right? Isn't that the University of Arlington?
Oh, University of Texas at Arlington. I thought you were saying
at
Denver.
Arlington, yeah. So I got it. Yeah. Fellow pastor of a church in Hawaii, and our listeners are going to glean great things.
Yeah.
It's going to be like they're sitting in a chair, and Sloan is going to feed them grapes, and it's going to be glorious.
I want to make sure everyone knows, even if you can't see what's happening right now. Apparently, Mike eats grapes in his eyes.
Okay.
I don't know why the grapes were going in your eye.
It was like,
okay.
I was going downward.
I don't know if you squeezed grape juice.
Sloan, great to have you on the podcast, bro.
Good to see you guys. I'm sorry I couldn't fly up to be with you in studio with your fancy mics and stuff.
Not quite in the budget for the podcast for flights in for guests.
Not yet.
Not yet. But it could be one day.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Bryan, we're so excited that you're here with us, or at least virtually here with us. We're excited to learn from you and have all of our listeners and viewers hear a little bit more about your story. So can I just go ahead and kick us off right now?
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
All right. We've known Bryan for, I don't know, maybe he's been associated with us for 3 or 4 years at least.
3 or 4 years. Bryan and I, when I used to live in Texas, had lunch once a month together for maybe 4 or 5 years. So let's just say we got a good decade in with Bryan. He's trusted. He's a faithful and strong leader of a church and doing a great job.
I love that.
Yeah.
And Bryan's the pastor of the Fields Church in Texas. So Bryan, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your church?
Yeah. Well, we've been connected with you guys going back to Silver Bay, probably 3 or 4 years, and Mike several years before that. But my relationship with Dave goes back 11 years, probably before even the founding of our church. So I was a pastor, student pastor, college pastor at another local church for about 7 years. And out of that process, the Lord just really convicted me of my lack of evangelism, and Mike preaching through Romans, Paul's great sorrow and unceasing anguish for the lost. It just wasn't in my heart, and the Lord really did a number on my own heart, and wanting to see more people come to faith in Jesus and see their lives transformed. And so that spurred on me joining a discipleship ministry called Downline. And as a part of Downline, we were kind of the first group to listen remotely, but me and a couple buddies met in a McDonald's at 5:30 a.m. on Tuesdays.
Yeah,
we were listening to messages, and really just the Lord was working on our hearts and growing us a ton in our knowledge and understanding of the word, but also our love for the church. And it was out of that the Lord really birthed the idea of planting another healthy, faithful church in our area. And we started gathering together, and started with a small group. It started then when I left our last church, we were meeting on Sunday nights, and all of that just kind of transformed to the point where we were looking for places to meet in the city, to engage the people, engage the community. One of my buddies, he had planted a church. He was meeting in the YMCA, was leaving to go to a more permanent facility, and told me to come and consider taking that space over. But I knew we couldn't afford what he paid, $650 a week or whatever it was. I didn't think we were ready for it, but he said something like, we're just renting space. I know you want to come and serve this community, a community like this. And so he challenged me to just come and share what the Lord had put on our heart. And I remember kind of in that moment when the YMCA came to mind or became open, I remember going back to some of those downline messages, and I remember taking notes and saying, there's a guy, named, I forgot his name, but I knew I had written down planting churches in a YMCA. And I remember he even gave his email address, gave his website and that kind of stuff. And I went rummaging through all of my notes and I found Dave's email, reached out to him. He called me back. We talked for multiple phone conversations, multiple hours before I went into the Y to share and to pitch. So I had, the right understanding of what it could look like, and shared that with the staff there, and they welcomed us right in.
What year was this, Bryan?
That was January, February of 2011.
Wow. That's awesome. I don't think I knew all that backstory.
Yeah. So I'm so thankful for Dave. And then Dave was the one that pointed me to Mike, but I'm so thankful for just the ideas, just the help. And he invited me many times to Silver Bay even after that. But unfortunately, I didn't take him up on it until much later. But yeah, our church has been in the Y for coming up 11 years this Easter.
Amen.
Happy
Happy anniversary.
Amen. Praise the Lord.
That's great. That's great. Share some highlights, brother. Like what's been a beautiful thing about being a church in the Y?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I tell everyone that I get to talk to about this, whether it's guests on Sunday of what makes us different, or even going back to one of the main reasons why I was really seeking to grow in my relationship with the Lord and wanted to plant a church, was just being connected with people, people who don't know Christ, who don't know the good news of the cross and the resurrection. And so we are surrounded by those people, whether it's Sunday mornings and people think that the Y's open and they show up in workout gear, and they aren't able to work out, but we welcome them into our gym, probably like y'all, there's been so many just neat connections. Obviously there's some of those board meetings where you're on the spot asked to do some invocation or prayer or devotional, and you better have something ready to be able to share, but you have the opportunity to share the good news and pray that people might believe. But
so are you on the board at your YMCA?
Yeah.
How long have you been on the board?
They had an advisory board at our branch that I was on, I guess probably 8 or 9 years. But then I guess when I became the kind of chairman of the advisory board, that jumped me to the kind of metro board for the whole area, not Dallas, not Fort Worth, but Arlington, Mansfield area. So I'm on that board, and as well as the executive board for them.
That's awesome. What's that been like for you as a pastor in a church in YMCA?
Well, it's good. I mean, it helps them to have that spiritual emphasis and to have that connection. I am the guy that they, point to for invocations and prayers, and I'm glad to do that. But it also helps us to think, about the Y's roots and foundations, and to remind us often of the reason why we do these things. And so I think that's not only helpful for the Y, but it's helpful for again, me as a pastor, being in space like that, because maybe but and this is true of me, but it was so easy, as we've joked about, home officing for me. I remember being in a church office and spending essentially 50 hours a week in a church building, not often connecting with non-members of our church or people who were invited by others. So it just enforces that relationship with people, and opens some really neat doors. So I'm really thankful for it and don't want to lose that.
That's great. Why don't you share one of those doors that were open, like as a result of meeting in the Y, you met this person, and like put some flesh on it for us, so that we can hear a story, man.
I think one of the go-to stories, and I don't want to tell this story as if this is typical every week or month or whatever, but it's just the most dramatic, and it even culminated in a lunch, or not culminated, but it's ongoing even in a lunch this week. But I remember, it had to be 8 or 9 years ago, when we were meeting at the Y, and just in and out, different things, meeting front desk people and inviting people, to our home group at our house for dinner. And actually, I think at that time it was meeting at a different person's house. So, but they came to that dinner, and then had a Catholic background, and were just asking tons of questions about, like what we believed and what we were doing and this, that, or the other. And her name was Carolina, and I was like, "Oh, Carolina, you know what? I need you to come and spend some time with my wife. You need to come and have some meals and ask her all these questions." And and they did, and they Carolina was over for spaghetti all the time, just coming over and get a part of our group, and ended up professing faith in Christ, and being able to be baptized in the Y pool, and is still a part of our church. And in fact, a couple of years after that, as we'd grown and see her as like a daughter in the faith, one of those young joker dudes showed up to the church, who worked at the Y as well, and buff, tattoos, and Graham was preaching. Our worship pastor was preaching, which is so good. And this big dude comes up afterwards to me and just starts bawling about the sin in his life and conviction of the Lord. And he gets saved as an invite from Carolina, from working at the front desk.
Yeah, that's so great.
So he gets involved, and he gets baptized and discipled by Graham and several others in our church. And it wasn't too long that Jordan was like, "Well, what do you think about Carolina and I?" And I was like, "No, bro. I literally told him, and he remembers this. You're not gonna have any chance with her until you grow in your faith significantly."
Right.
Well, he did. And they're married.
And they're married.
No way.
They're married.
Wow.
Yeah, I performed their wedding. Graham sang some songs at it. It was just such a cool deal.
That's beautiful.
And they've been plugged in. He's teaching teenagers the Bible now, passionate about sharing the gospel with Jehovah's Witnesses. Her family's been involved in the church. It's been sweet, even to the point what I said a minute ago. Like, I had lunch with him this week.
Yeah.
And he unfortunately lost his job, but all the while he not his job at the Y, but he went from there to another job. But more recently, he just felt the Lord impress on him to get a part-time job at the Y.
Yeah.
So he got a part-time job while working another full-time job, and was having great relationships and conversations. And then he got let go from his full-time job, and is like, I want to spend more time at the Y, because I get to have relationships with people, and I get to have good conversations like I never have anywhere else. And so we were talking about what that might look like to make a career at the Y, at least to do ministry. So
Brian, what a great
Yeah,
story.
that's awesome.
That's great.
That's great. That's a bullseye on multiple levels.
Multiple levels.
Yeah.
Brian, Jeff and I have a mutual friend. His name's Doug, and talks about the church being comfortable at home games, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get to choose how things go, how we host people, in church, the songs we sing, the content that we discuss, whatever. But we need to grow in the area of away games, right? To go to, which would be the model of Jesus, not this like necessarily come and see, but go and be a part of, and to minister in that manner. How would you say that the Y is almost a mixture of those? Like, it's not necessarily home field, home courted, whatever, but it's this common area. The church and the community share. It's more than just like more than four walls, though. Like, I don't know what's kind of your philosophy of ministry as it relates to that, where the Y is this third space. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Well, we do. I mean, the home aspect of church and a Y might be the Sunday morning where they're closed, we're open. We're setting up the space to be used for our intentionality. But the other times during the week, it's away space. I would say it's their space, and by God's grace, some of us have these open doors to come in and to use it. And so that away game, when they say, hey, come and join, coach our teams, then as we can encourage as many of our people to coach teams, and to do it with a gospel-centered presence, then great. Or when you think of so many churches trying to do all of these attractional things to get people to their doors or in their doors or on their property. Some of those are good and great, but the Y does so many of those things already. And again, by God's grace, some of us have an open door to be able to come to those events that they're already doing, and to do so with a gospel-centered mindset. So we can come to the cookies and cocoa with Santa event and do a Christmas nativity ornament craft table for them, and get down on our knees and tell the story of Jesus's birth before they go and take a picture with Santa. Or Healthy Kids Days coming up here at RY in April, right after Easter. And so there's going to be dentists and doctors and book reading clubs and education this, and eating, healthy weight child discussions and tables and booths and all of this. But we've got the open door to show up and say, hey, why don't you think about your kids' spiritual health? And so we've got already got gospel Easter, death and resurrection of Jesus, kids booklets to be able to hand out, and resource parents with parenting materials. And then it, goes beyond even some of the events that they're doing and bringing gospel centrality to that. But it's them saying, hey, we have this need, could you help us with this? So, one of our guys is doing ESL class there, and he's seen that as his mission.
That's great.
And so he's showing up every Tuesday night, meeting with people, teaching English, but using one of the Gospels as the textbook for teaching ESL. So there's so many opportunities. There are so many away spaces that if the Lord gives us the open door to come into, then we we ought to take advantage of.
That's right, man.
Yeah, I love all the opportunities to be involved with kids at the Y.
Yeah.
There's such natural opportunities to share the life and hope and love of Jesus Christ with kids in the Y.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Amen.
Jeff's the basketball coach, Bryan, at the Y.
Yeah.
Was.
The season's over? Oh,
Yeah.
no.
I know.
I didn't get one game invite. Bro.
You missed it.
Do you want to talk now or after the podcast?
We can talk after the podcast. We did get substantially better throughout the year.
Really?
I will say. Yeah.
Sure.
It was. I got Coach of the Year award. I wasn't going to say it, but
Yeah.
they did give it to
Coach K is calling.
From your team?
me. Yeah. From my team voted me the Coach of the
your
Year.
team. All right.
That's right.
Well,
what
hey,
were you
we
gonna
only
say?
have a couple more minutes,
Uh-huh.
but I was just gonna ask Bryan because it's it's easy sometimes to paint a rosy picture of planting churches and leading churches in Ys, and there are great. We love it. We think we love it as a model for planting churches. We know it's not the only way, but we just figured it's worth Bryan just hearing a story maybe from you of a frustration or a hardship or what's been like, a low. I don't know. Even for me, for example, we came into our space 2 weeks ago, and there was an Indian Diwali the night before, and so all over the stage, there's like rice, and all over the floor and the carpet, there's all these different colors of stains in the carpet that we don't know where they came from, and it's like, well, that's all right. Like we're not here to have an awesome production and the best facility.
Yes.
We're here because we think God's calling us here to be in the YMCA. So I don't know, give us a frustration or a hard thing or.
Yeah, we don't have any of those stories, Jeff.
Okay, that's it for the podcast then.
Okay, there you are.
That's all we got.
Well, I mean, we 2 weeks ago on that Sunday, we had our members meeting at night, and they booked a party beforehand in that same room. And the Y would have been closed at that point, but they booked a party, and so we came in to be able to set up, and the party's in full swing and was not going to be shutting down soon. So our meeting started late, but it was, I was thinking about that because you asked me to think about some of the hardships, and if we focus on some of those hardships like that, where we had to, I'm getting out the broom with sweet Diane who works the front desk and say, hey, give me that broom. And we're picking up glitter from this princess party and this, that, or the other. And that can be really frustrating if, like you said a minute ago, we're focused on production and performance and that kind of
Absolutely.
thing. But man, the Lord really has taught me a lot and taught our church a lot and trained us to really realize that that's not what it's about. And so anytime that one of those kinds of things happen, and they happen often, those kinds of things do, there's always, and I was writing some of this down, even just thinking about those frustrations, they turn out to be a good opportunity, like to minister to Diane, who is on staff at the Y, and to come alongside her and to value her and to say, hey, what you're doing is important. This is good work. Well done. How can I pray for you? That kind of thing. Or to have that interaction rather than being frustrated at the people who had the party who aren't leaving, to be able to say, did you have a good party? Was it good? Yeah. Well, that's great. Praise God. We're about to have a church meeting here. We're here every Sunday, to all of those things, if self-focused, they can become sources of frustration, but they could also become neat opportunities.
That's a great word.
That's a great word. I totally agree. Yeah. That's what I was going to say is it's like the frustrations also at the same time force us to focus on the main things.
Yeah. I like even thinking about the rest of the world, they don't have some of the nice things that we're talking about. The frustrations that we have are just very normal for churches around most of the world. And so it likens us to them, and it gives us understanding for, Christians around the world that are meeting in shared space and don't have a space of their own, or meeting in their homes, or this, that, or the other. And it lowers, performance, which I think we could use some of that in our day and age.
I told you Bryan Sloan is solid.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
You were right.
Thanks.
Great job.
Bryan, we love you.
Love y'all too.
Man, thanks for just loving Christ and his church, for loving and reaching out to the Y. And we love that you're a part of the city movement, and we like partnering with you to plant more churches and YMCAs. So
yeah. Hey, Bryan, if anyone has questions for you or wants to get in contact with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Twitter.
Yeah, he's a big tweeter.
No. No.
Me either.
I have forced myself, even in the past couple of weeks, tweet some of these good prayers that you're reading in these Puritan books. Get these things out there because they are so good.
They're so good.
But no, I am not a good social media. Social media is not the place to do it. But I mean, you can email me, Bryan@thefieldschurch.net. Bryan with a Y.
All right, there you have it. Well, hey, Bryan, thanks for joining. Any last wisdom or any last things you want to say?
Just thank you. Thank you. Thanks to Dave for the Lord using him and his faithfulness just to teach the book of Ephesians years ago that made a connection, and then all those phone calls, and just y'all's friendship over the years it's just encouraging to have like-minded brothers doing very similar things to do it alongside one another. So thanks for leading us well and doing these podcasts, doing the stories that the videos that Dave was making. All of those things are good resources so that we can try to get more pastors planting churches in YMCAs, and they see that this actually is a thing. It's not just us in our garage or in our home office alone. There are more people doing this stuff. So I appreciate you guys. Thank y'all.
Yeah, there's some when our next podcast in April, we'll share some of these stories, but it's just amazing some of the things that are happening around the world through the city movement right now. Like we're emailing with a guy from Australia who's really excited and encouraged. Someone from Kentucky here in the States just bought 100 books to give out to all the associations and things throughout Kentucky and West Virginia. And the Lord is really in this. It's not a man effort, but it just feels like it's God inspired and God's moving. So,
well, and even some of the efforts of you guys doing this intentionally, some of our members are moving to Florida, and I was looking for a church in the area and happened to find one that was at the YMCA, and being able to connect them with, the website and y'all's resources and invite to Silver Bay. And, I think it'll be helpful for many more, the more people that find out about it that happen to be in the Y, to equip them with more strategy and more intentionality moving forward. So well done, brothers. Thank you.
You got it.
Thanks, Bryan.
Well, hey, thanks everyone for watching or listening. If you want to connect with us or get more info, you can go to uscitymovement@gmail.com and send us an email, or go to thecitymovement.com. That's our website. Thanks for joining us. For Bryan Sloan and Mike Newman, this is Jeff Snyder, and that was the City Movement Podcast.